afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Red Light Sports Ramble. I am Troy Otradovic, as always, joined with Evan Watallison. Evan, we have a returning guest, somebody very special, near and dear to Packer fans. We started talking last week, but today we're going to welcome Alicia Kramer back, who is the daughter of a Packer great, Jerry Kramer, and we're definitely going to talk about the things today about why Jerry Kramer has not been into the Hall of Fame. But welcome, Alicia. We're glad you could join us today. I'm going to let Evan take over and give just a brief background of your father's career, so those that are listening in that don't really know who Jerry Kramer is can get a really good idea of who we're talking about today.
Yeah, because we contribute to daily cowboyfootballfix.com, and just to make, we have a lot of hits from there just so they get an understanding of who we're talking about. Jerry Kramer was a 6-time All-Pro, 5 first-team honors for right guard for Vince Lombardi's Green Bay Packers. He went to 3 Pro Bowls, and he was a member of the NFL All-Decade team for the 1960s. In addition to that, he was also a member of the NFL's 50th anniversary team in 1969, and he's the only member of that team not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So with that sentence I just read, what gives? Why isn't he in the NFL Hall of Fame? I know we talked about this a little bit last week, but I guess, why isn't he in there? What reasons are you hearing on why he hasn't been elected yet?
Well, I started this campaign about 3 years ago on social media and just started opening up the conversation. And as it went on, I didn't know anything about Dave Robinson going to go in at the time. And what I was hearing back, I really couldn't get a straight answer from anybody with the Hall of Fame. I was getting a whole bunch of people skirting around the issue, but really what I got from other people were that there were too many Packers in the Hall of Fame, that Dad had helped write a very successful book that kind of went behind the locker room doors, and maybe that the voters of the Hall of Fame, who are also journalists, were jealous of that success that he had with that book. And, another theory was that Dad had done something to keep him out of the Hall of Fame, whether it was, say something or do something. And that's another theory that I've proved that nothing has happened with Dad. There's no dark underlying reason that he's not in the Hall of Fame that I found out yet. So with that being said, Dave Robinson was entered last year, which was really awesome. So that kind of blows the whole theory about there being too many Packers in the Hall of Fame. Would they put another one in? I don't know. Brett Favre will be up for eligibility in a few years. I would think that they would probably include him, but it's really been an interesting thing. And like you said, Dad's part of that 50th anniversary team. And all the guys on that team are in the Hall except for Dad, including the 2 backup guys. The 2 runner-ups for his position are both in the Hall of Fame. So it makes you just really wonder why he isn't there. And that's what I'm doing today is trying to get people interested and help me get him into the Hall.
Well, I know, Alicia, we talked last week, and you brought up a very good point, and this is the thing that I've always heard, too, about Jerry Kramer. The reason he's not in there is because there's too many Packers in the Hall of Fame, and like you said, well, then, boom, Dave Robinson goes in, and you and I even talked about this last week. So if there's too many Packers in the Hall of Fame, does that mean Brett Favre is not going in on a first-ballot Hall of Fame vote? My answer is no way. Brett Favre is going into the Hall of Fame. So let's take that and throw that out the window, because I would really like, and you had mentioned this last week, and about we just want to get an answer about why this is not happening. So can you kind of take us through how open is your dad about talking about not being in the Hall of Fame? What has he shared with you? And kind of where is his mental state right now, not being in the Hall of Fame, and what are his thoughts? And I know you can't talk for your dad, but what are some things you've shared as to what he's thinking as to what's keeping him out of the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, this has actually brought Dad and I a little bit closer in our relationship because I've learned more about who Dad is and his career. And, it started out, Dad had played football, did all this wonderful stuff, and then quit playing football. And he thought after the first 5 years he'd be put into the Hall of Fame because there was talk about that. There was a lot of talk, and Dad was getting honors and accolades for it. And then the years went by, and Dad was nominated 10 different times. So that's 10 different years that he got his hopes up and thought that he would, because that's just the finals, almost right before the final step of going in. So he was kind of led on this belief that he was going to get in. People were telling him he was going to get in. He was getting more honors and more notoriety. And then as the years went by and he didn't get in, he was upset. I mean, obviously he would be hurt, he kind of jerked around, you don't know what to think, start questioning your ability, questioning who you are. And Dad went through that process. And then the thing that really stood out to me is how Dad accepted it. And we go to sporting events or to, these appearances Dad does, and he was announced as a Hall of Famer. And, the first 50,000 times somebody did it, Dad was really nice and, corrected them and let them know that he wasn't in. And then after a while, it just gets to be like, well, you're interrupting the ceremony. Don't say anything. Just let it be. And I just started noticing that. And that really bothered me because people were coming up to me and talking about Dad. I saw his career and stuff happen. I wasn't there. I never saw Dad play, but I started learning about the history of him. And I was going through newspapers and articles about the Packers when they played. And so I was learning about Dad. And then these last few years, he didn't think I could do anything with social media. He didn't understand the whole gravity of social media. He thought that I would be just talking to my friends about this. And I ended up reaching into Packer Nation and real football fans who love football and who love the history of football. And they started talking about it, and they were wanting to understand why. And so Dad was stunned when he was going back to Green Bay or anywhere now, and people want to know what's going on, what's happening, what's Alicia doing, and what are you doing? And Dad's really not that involved. Dad's working on his golf game. He's working on his fishing. He's working on business projects, and but me, I'm going around stirring up a hornet's nest, and it's really interesting because I've gotten a really good look at who Dad is, both on and off the field. He was a great football player on the field, but he's a great ambassador to football off the field. And those are qualities I think make up Pro Football Hall of Famer. And Dad has accepted it. It may never happen, but there's a part of me that when I sit and watch a game with him or see him talk about Hall of Famers and stuff, I think a part of him still really wants it, and that's what keeps me going. Or else I wouldn't want to keep perpetuating this. I think it bothers Dad to some extent that people keep asking about it.
Now, for the Pro Baseball Hall of Fame, they make the results, like the percentages of what they got voted on public. And I know for the Pro Football Hall of Fame voting, they don't announce it to the media, to the public, the average Joe, like Troy and I, the voting totals, like how short he was. Now, for the players that are up for the Hall of Fame, do you know at all, like how close he was, like how many votes off, or
top 15.
Like, do you get any of that information?
Yeah, and I really shouldn't be. It's from people that are kind of on the inside that want to keep saying, Alicia, keep working at this. You guys are close. Every year, Dad makes it. He gets nominated, and then he gets that whittling down process where he gets into the top 15 or so, and that's where Dad's been battling, is that top percentage of players, and that's where he continues to be. And I don't know what it's going to take to propel him. There was a recent newspaper article talking about the voting system and how Baseball Hall of Fame has so many more voters, and how the Pro Football Hall of Fame has very little. There's only 46 voters, and to get those guys, you have to be almost another rider to understand somebody's career and to promote them, and that's what gets them in there. And it's kind of political. It's really, I was hesitant to say that in a lot of ways, but it's kind of political. I've been approached by people that said, if you scratch our back, we will scratch yours. And I never felt like Dad's career we had to do that. His resume spoke for itself. I didn't feel like we have to go pay a certain amount of money to have somebody help us get Dad into the Hall, or go scratch somebody's back to help him get into the Hall. But it kind of feels that way a lot of the time, and it's very frustrating because there's so many things going on there that you wonder, is a person really getting in on his talent, or is it something else? So I don't know.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, Alicia, again. 46 media members. And I guess my concern is, and I was reading an article, and actually Evan and I, it's funny how Evan and I are on the same page. We totally do our research separate, and you probably didn't even know this, Alicia. We do it separate, and then we get together a little bit before the show. We were both looking at an article by Bob Fox from the Bleacher Report. And in there, Bob Fox was talking to a scout, Chris Landry, who doesn't know why your dad's not in the Hall of Fame either. But Bob Fox went on to say, why are there not people that include former coaches, former people who have been elected to the Hall of Fame, personnel people from the NFL? Because what you're saying, I can almost now see that as that political realm that you're trying to battle. And because when you had mentioned your dad wrote this great book, and he's written a number of books that are just wonderful, I can see how somebody would get a little pissed off because your dad's a better writer than them. And I can see the ego getting in the way now that you brought that up. So what is your thought on the media members? And, when you look at it, what do you think has to happen there? Because they're not, they might be football people, but they didn't play against your dad. They didn't put the pads on. They didn't get in between the trenches. So when you look at that, what do you think would need to happen there?
I understand what you're saying. I think, we've spent a lot of time discussing theories and stuff, and it's just, stuff we spit out because we don't have really an explanation for any of it. So we're just trying to feel it all out. But you think about the Hall of Fame, and the Steelers and the Packers have had a lot of Hall of Fame members go in. So you think about that, and so the Hall of Fame is in Canton, Ohio. There's Steeler country and Packer country, but if you're going to include the rest of the country into this Hall of Fame, you've got to put some of the players from the different areas into the Hall of Fame. And I think that there were a lot of Packers going in during that era, the very beginning. And Dad, for some reason, was part of it, but he got on the tail end of it, and so they started inducting other players. And then what happened were some of the riders passed away. Some of Dad's opponents have passed away or had problems or, memory problems or, just whatever comes with the territory. And so Dad's kind of being forgotten about. The people that really pushed for him back in the day aren't there anymore. And I think that really it's a matter of Dad had just kind of got passed by. I like the Packer theory that there's too many Packers in there. That sounds like a good theory. And the writers are jealous of Dad, which in the big scheme of things, why would they be jealous? What would that do for them in the long run? But what I really think it is that they had so many players going in that Dad just kept getting shuffled off to the side because he was a guard, and because there were so many Packers in. But I really think part of me believes, and I keep pushing this, that they will remember Dad, that they're going to include him in the next few years and make it right. There's a part of me that really believes that they recognize his career, and it's because we, as fans, people who cared, people who have an interest in football, who know it, took the time to say something and to stand up for whatever we believed in and said something. So I really think if we keep doing that and pushing it, that Dad will finally get his day in Canton.
Now you bring up keep pushing it. What exactly can our listeners do to help get him into the Hall of Fame. You know, you had, at the tail end last week, had mentioned a couple addresses. Like, what can we do to do our part in trying to get the, you know, this injustice righted?
Well, the Hall of Fame is a classic institution, and there's nothing that a person can do. Like, you can't just email the Hall of Fame and cast a vote. You have to write a letter to the Pro Football Hall of Fame and nominate Dad. And when you write the Hall of Fame, we ask that people be respectful and don't put down the Hall of Fame voters or the Hall of Fame itself or anything. We just ask them to remember Dad's career and write passionately about Dad as a guard, and he was a kicker, a great kicker, you know, and he's ambassador to football, like I've said before, and the next best thing that people can do is share the story. I've shared it on social media, on Twitter and Facebook and, you know, Google Plus and just everything that I could get my hands on. And it started a chain reaction of people who remembered Dad playing or who have heard about Dad playing. And those people have shared stories with their football friends. And that's how we've got this thing going. And those two things are the most important things that people can do is write the Hall of Fame and share the story. And I think with that we could be really successful.
Do you have an address, Alicia, that we can actually put out there? Do you have it with you?
I sure do. I do. People will want to address their letter to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Attention, the Senior Selection Committee. And the address is 2121 George Hallis Drive, Northwest, Canton, Ohio, 44708. And like I said, I'm on Twitter and I'm on Facebook. You just Google Jerry Kramer and I pop up and all our Hall of Fame stuff pops up. And I really got a really cool portfolio that we submitted to the Hall of Fame last year that has all the letters from, you know, current Pro Football Hall of Famers and some that have passed, like Roland Olson and a couple others that really support Dad. And you see their handwritten letters, and there's about 40 of them, plus all the articles that support Dad, and hopefully I can get the readers brought back to a time when Dad's career was important. And I just really would hope that people would take the time to write. It would mean a lot to our family.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And for our listeners, her Twitter handle is Jerry Kramer for the number 4 HOF at Jerry Kramer 4 HOF. You can find her on Twitter and interact with her on Twitter. She's very cool to interact with. And just, you know, compliment I want to make about your dad is I've read the book Instant Replay, and it's actually, you know, one of the first books I remember, you know, real books, I guess I should say, I remember reading. Obviously, when I was a little kid, all those little kid books, but it's like the first like actual book I remember reading, and you know, I just love the book. And you know, I've had the privilege of meeting him once, but never, you know, unfortunately wasn't able to, you know, talk much with him. Now, is there any story that he has shared with you from his playing days that, you know, he wouldn't mind the listeners hearing about? We got about 11 minutes left.
Well, the fun thing about those guys when they get together is they start telling stories and reminding each other of stuff that's pretty funny. And one of the funniest things that ever happened to me was when I first met Ron Kramer. Ron Kramer was a teammate of Dad's and a really good friend while they played and stuff, so much that he knew my mom, Wink, and they were family friends. Well, I had met Ron at a golf tournament, and it was the first time meeting him. And he came up to me and shook my hand really vigorously and goes, "Hi, Alicia, I'm your real dad." And I was like, "He's my real dad?" And and he walked off, and he was just smiling, walked off, and didn't say anything else. And my dad's out playing golf, and I'm kind of wandering around the golf course thinking about Ron Kramer being my real dad, how Dad's going to explain this. And it was just really funny. I mean, that's those guys. They're like family. If I call Bart or if I call Fuzzy, I mean, they'll treat me like I'm one of the kids. I remember the first time I met Ray Nitschke, he scared the living crap out of me. he was so gruff and so big and so booming and so just big, but he ended up being the nicest guy and just treating us like one of his kids and watching over us. And I don't know, there's so many stories with Dad and his playing days. I really can't think of all of them. They're kind of, I don't know, that's another reason I love Dad. I love listening to him talk. He's a good storyteller, and anytime I'm around, he can make up a good story about things that have happened to him, and I enjoy that a lot with him. And when he gets in with the guys, I even hear more details I'm probably not supposed to hear, but yeah.
Stuff you can't share on the air either, I'm sure. Some of it's probably a little R-rated.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's stuff that I would love to tell people about everybody, about the guys, but it's a matter of respect and, just the position I'm in, I would never say anything, but it's just like, wow, just to know these guys that personally and nobody really knows this stuff about them is pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
well, I thank you guys for what you're doing.
Well,
thanks for being on and joining us.
Alicia, Evan and I are diehard Packer fans. I told you my father's a diehard Packer fan. After the show last week, Evan's like, it would be cool to get your dad on the show. And I'm like, there's no way, Evan. I said, I would have to mute him every 2 minutes if he was talking about why Jerry Kramer's not in the Hall of Fame. He would be dropping F-bombs left and right.
Let's get your dad on.
I think it goes back. No, I will not. I'm making that judgment call now because he is 83 years old and he is stubborn in his ways. And I could warn him, Dad, don't use the F word. And the first word out of his mouth would be an F word. But I just wanted to go down that road because growing up in Green Bay in that blue collar town, that's the way the Packers were back then. And you bring up all these things about the stories of your dad and the guys and that camaraderie. And I know that this would mean a lot to get into the Hall of Fame. But have you ever sat back with your dad and just thought about what it would be like to actually be on that stage with his bust to put the gold jacket on? Has that been anything that you two have discussed on what it would feel like for him to actually be there? Because I think he's going to get there eventually. Have you guys sat and actually talked about what it would feel like?
2 years ago, after I did that big campaign online and stuff, and we had all these people support, we did talk about that, what it would have been like. And it was very bittersweet, and I was really frustrated at the time because Dad didn't get in. And Dad told me not to think about those things, just to keep, thinking about the future and keep being positive. And, I was thinking that we were so close that who I would have speak on Dad's behalf, because I knew that if I got up there, I would just end up bawling. I would be so happy and so happy for Dad and happy for our family, and I just get kind of choked up just thinking about it. That I would need somebody else to speak for us because I know that I couldn't. But I do, there's a part of me that imagines Dad getting his jacket and me hugging him and patting him on the back and being a part of that career that he had. I helped do that. I want to do that. And so when I think about that, what gets me emotional is that what if I have to do that without my dad being there? How will I handle that when my dad's not there and then they decide to give it to us? And that's what bothers me the most when I think about it. Do I want to shun the Hall of Fame? Do I want to gladly accept it after all these years? How will that happen? So, yeah, you have to imagine yourself as a winner. You have to imagine yourself being successful. Because if you don't, you'll never get there. And that's, Lombardiisms that Dad taught us growing up. It was kind of subconscious. We kids kind of picked up on that stuff, commitment and drive and stuff. And to think like you're going to win, to think like you're going to be successful. So, yeah, I thought about it. And Dad's thought about it, but he never entertains it like I would entertain it. I think he's tired of trying to do that. And he's just really, for as a person can be, happy with where he is in his life. He's got grown, healthy children that are successful in their lives. You know, he's got grandbabies that are good, that are growing up to be successful people and good people. And he's got a family that loves and cares about him, friends that love and care about him. And to Dad, that's enough. And to have a roof over his head and food on his table, those are the basics that that people really don't understand, that they kind of get a mixed message about, that Dad is really a basic, down-to-earth guy. And you can decorate him with all the gold rings and the trophies and stuff, but he's still that basic good guy that will give you the shirt off his back. So, yeah, I've imagined it. Dad, he's talked about it, but not so much, probably not as much as I have.
Yeah, about getting me choked up a little bit there, how emotional you were getting. So just want to let our listeners know that they can check out your website. It's jerrykramer.com. You know, they have all his bio and stats. They have all the nomination stuff that you've collected already from former players. They have a bunch of videos on there. And they also have the store as well, where you can get the book, instant replay, inside the locker room CDs. And it says on the store that they're all going to be, like, you know, the books and are all going to be, if you purchase them, called autographed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
And,
so check it out. Go ahead.
Thanks, Evan. No, thank you. I really appreciate you guys taking the time and the interest in helping me with this. It's been really good. You know, the Packer fans are awesome. Football fans are awesome. I've met some really good people doing this, and that's probably the best experience I've gotten out of it, besides doing it for Dad. It's really the people have been really passionate and good. Not flaky, so run off the mouth. I'm talking about genuine people who care and will take the time to write, and I appreciate that.
Well, if we have to have you on this show every month, sorry to interrupt you, Evan, but if we have to have you every month to get your dad in the Hall of Fame, then that's what we're going to do. Because
I'm up for it.
And here's the thing. I'll tell you this right now, Alicia, and I'm going to tell you this through and through. The day your dad gets in the Hall of Fame, I will be at Canton, because it's not that far from Pittsburgh. I will go into general admission, and I will be there, because the final word that I'm going to say, and I'll let Evan wrap it up, is your dad deserves to be in the Hall of Fame with all those other great Packers from that era to make it complete. He is the missing piece from those glory Packers, and he deserves to be there, and I will be at Canton the day that he gets his gold jacket. So that's my conviction there. So I appreciate you coming on. It will be.
And to go along with what Troy was saying, I'll be there as well. You know, when that day comes, I'll make the trip there, and I'll be in general admission. You know, it's a trip that I've always wanted to make. I want to, check out the NFL Hall of Fame, and what not a better year to do it is when he finally gets his just due. So I do have to say, I know you can't, travel probably as much anymore, but next time you do swing out towards Wisconsin, we definitely should find time to get together. I'd love to talk with you further, and thank you so much for joining us. Do you have about 40 seconds left? Do you have any last words you want to say to our listeners?
No, I just thank you. Thank you. And the continued support helps me a lot to do what I'm doing. I think we'll be successful, but I need people's help, and I appreciate if you're right.
Well, we're in your corner. If you need us for anything, Alicia, you know where to find us. We'll do anything you need us to do to get any words up. Let us know.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate that a lot. Appreciate it.
So with that said, everyone, we thank Alicia Kramer for being on the show today. With that said, everyone enjoy your night. We'll see you all at the next red light. We'll get back at you tomorrow.